In this video, you will learn how to estimate. So to estimate, you first must need to know how to round. If you were given the number 5,645, you could either round to the thousands place, the hundreds place, or the tens place. Now I guess make sure you know your digits, which digit is which one. So the 5 would be your ones place, 4 is tens place, 6 is your hundreds place, 5 is your thousands place. So to round to the thousands place, I look at the number before it, which would be this hundreds place, the 6. If that number is closer to 10, then I round the 5 up. If it's closer to 0, then I round the 5. I leave the 5 at 5. So here, the 6 is closer to 10, which means I round the 5 up to a 6. So this would round to be 6,000. If you're rounding to the hundreds place, you look at the number before the hundreds place, which would be this tens place. Now the 4 is closer to 0 than to 10, so because of that, I need to round down, which would leave the 6 right here at 6. So I'd round this whole thing to 5,600. And then to the tens place, I look at the one before it, which would be the ones place. So here, the 5, if it's in the middle like that, I'm going to round up. So I round the 4 up to a 5, so this becomes 5,650. Here is a much larger number. So make sure you know your digits. This would be the 100 millions place. The 2 would be the 10 millions. The 3 would be the millions place. Then you have 100,000, 10,000, thousands place, hundreds, tens, and ones place. So we're going to round this to each of those different places. So to the 100 millions place, 100 million would be the 1, so I look at the number before it, which is the 2. Well, the 2 is lower, is closer to 0 than to 10, so I'm going to round down, which means that the 1 would stay the same. So this would be 1, and then followed by all these zeros. So that would round to 100 million. Looking at the 10 millions place, so we look at the 2, we're rounding the 2 to either a 2 or a 3. So to round, we look at the number before, which would be the 3. Well, 3 is closer to 0, so I round down, so the 2 stays the same. So it's going to be 1, 2, and then followed by all these zeros. So to the 10 millions place, we would have 120 million. To the millions place, we look at the 4, the one before it. The 4 is again closer to 0, so I'm going to round down, which means the 3 would stay the same. So this would be 1, 2, 3, followed by a bunch of zeros. So this would be rounded to 123 million. To the 100,000s place, we're going to look at the 10,000s place, which is the 5. So the 5 is right in the middle, which means we're going to round up. So the 4 would round up to the next number, which is a 5. So this would round to 1, 2, 3, 5, followed by a bunch of zeros. So this would be 123,500,000. To the 10,000s place, we're going to look at the 6, which would be the thousands place. So the 6 is bigger than 5, it's closer to 10, so I'm going to round up, so this 5 would round up to a 6. So this would be 123,460,000. To the thousands place, we're going to look at the 7, which is the hundreds place. The 7 is closer to 10, so I'm going to round up, so the 6 would round to a 7. So my answer would be 123,457,000. For the hundreds place, we're going to look at the tens place, the one before it. So the 8 we're going to look at. The 8 is closer to 10, so I round the 7 up to an 8. So this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, followed by 2 zeros. In the tens place, we look at the 9, which is the ones place. and the 9 is closer to 10, so I'm going to round the 8 up to a 9, and so it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 0. Now this was examples with rounding large numbers. So the question is, how do you round small numbers? So if you had, for example, 2.34567, and you wanted to round to a particular decimal place. So maybe you want to round to the 10th place, or maybe the 100th place, or the 1,000th, or the 10,000th. So make sure you know your digits here. This 3, the first number after the decimal would be your 10th place, and then your 100th place, and then 1,000th, 10,000th, 100,000th, etc. So to round to the 10th place, I do the same thing I did with the big numbers. So the 10th place is the 3, and to round, I look at the number, in this case, the number after. So the 4 comes after the 3. So I look at the 4 to make sure if I'm going to round up or down. So the 4 is closer to 0 than to 10, so I'm going to round down, which means the 3 would stay the same. Alright, so it's going to be 2.3 followed by a bunch of zeros, and you don't need to write all the zeros at the end of a decimal. So this would be 2.3. For the 100th place is the 4, so I look at the one before it, which is the 5. So the 5 is right in the middle, which means I'm going to round the 4 up. So I round the 4 up to a 5, so this would round to a 2.35, followed by a bunch of zeros, but the zeros are not necessary with decimals. And then the 1,000th place, 1,000th would be the 5. So to round this number, I look at the one after it, which is the 6. 6 is closer to 10, so I round the 5 up to a 6. So this becomes 2.346. And then the 10,000th place, the 10,000th place is the 6, so I look at the number after it to determine if I round up or leave it there at a 6. Well, 7 is closer to 10, so I'm going to round the 6 up to a 7. So my answer would be 2.3457. So that is how you round. Now to estimate, I'm going to round the different numbers that I am either adding or subtracting or multiplying. So for example, if we were to round to the nearest 1,000 and we are given these two numbers, what you do is you round each number to the nearest 1,000 and then you add together. So if you have the 4,827, that would round up to a 5,000. And then 7,215 would round down to 7,000. So I have 5,000 plus 7,000, which would be 12,000. So my estimation of these two numbers added together would be 12,000. And in reality, the actual answer would have been 12,042. So estimating is just a way to get a close answer to the actual answer. Next we have a subtraction problem. And this one you are to round to the nearest 100. So to round 2,547, I look at the tens place to round to the hundreds. So the 4 is smaller, it's closer to 0. So I'm going to round down, which means the 5 would stay the same. So this would round to 2,500. So this would be 2,500. And then over here, rounding this one to the nearest 100, I look at the 2, it's closer to 0, which means the 1 stays the same. So this would be 3,100. So I have 2,500 minus 3,100. So 25 minus 31 would be a negative 6. So this would approximate to negative 600. And in reality, the actual answer would have been a negative 577. So we are close by estimating. We're not too far off. Next, we have an addition problem with decimals. And here you are to round to the nearest tenth. So I round 1.64 to the nearest tenth, which would be 1.6. And then the 3.87 to the nearest tenth, I round the 8 up to 3.9. So I have 1.6 plus 3.9, which would be 5.5. That is our estimation. The actual answer would have been 5.51. Next, we have multiplication. We have 530 times 270. And you are told to estimate by rounding to the nearest hundred. So the 530 would round to 500. The 270 would round up to 300. So we have 500 times 300. 5 times 3 is 15. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros after that. So my estimation would be 150,000. Whereas the actual answer would be 143,000. And lastly, we have a division problem. 976 divided by 230. So you're told to round to the nearest hundred, and to do that with 976, we look at the tens place, the 7, and that's closer to 10, so I round the 9 up to a 10. So this would round up to 10, and then 0, 0, so 10, 100, or 1,000. And then the 230 would round down to 200. It's closer to 200 than to 300. So I have 1,000 divided by 200. Well, 1,000 divided by 200 would be 5. So that is my estimation, and the actual answer would be 4.24.